my friend Paul used to talk to me about going back to visit his brother in rural Ohio. Paul had grown up in a very conservative religious household in an offshoot of the Mennonite tradition. And though he remained a person of deep Christian faith throughout his life, it was also the case that through his education and travel as a missionary and broad experience that he eventually left behind many of the more rigid beliefs and habits of his upbringing. But his brother did not. In his older age, Paul's brother had become almost conspiratorially conservative, more than before. And Paul would often lament to me how painful it could be for them to be together. Though they were the last living siblings in the family, their worldviews just did not overlap at all. In fact, it seemed they were profoundly contradictory. Though the two would never even attempt to talk about politics, even the day-to-day details of their lives, their work, and the lives of their children and grandchildren would usually lead them back to difficult and disagreeable topics in the end. I remember that once I asked Paul what it was he did then when he went to visit his brother, if he couldn't talk to him about anything at all. And Paul said, "When I visit him, we sing together. We sing the old hymns of our childhood. It's all the unity that we can muster, and it's enough." Though I had always known Paul as a faithful tenor in the church choir, I was still surprised by this. I almost couldn't imagine these two old men choosing to sit around singing old Mennonite harmonies when they'd run out of anything else to say to each other. But the more I thought about it, the more beautiful it really seemed to me. When I think about why church music is important, that's often what I think about. Not the messages in the lyrics, though those too are important. I think about Paul sitting around singing with his brother, making the only harmony that they could make. And I am aware, and I am thinking about that, how the act of making church music is so much more than performative. That it's a spiritual discipline that shapes and forms us in the ways of our faith. To sing together as an ensemble or as an entire congregation requires us to listen to each other, to make room, to compromise, to adjust our tempo to the shared rhythm, to hold each other accountable, to give support where it's needed, and to sometimes hold back so others can shine. It's just as much about doing it as it is about doing it together. And I think that's so important. You know, I can remember back to the pandemic when everyone I know that was involved with church music was making digital anthems. Remember those things with all the boxes of faces? And thank goodness they did that. Thank goodness you did that, for you sustained the rest of us with song during a terribly difficult hour. It was such a gift. But I can also remember that most of the musicians I knew at that time said, "You know, I'm glad we're doing this, but it's just not the same." I have realized that singing into my iPhone headphones is just not why I'm part of a church choir. But I sing in the church choir to sing with others. And to make music isn't really the whole point. The togetherness is the whole point. And I think that's just right. Singing together can be a master class in working and living as a community. And sadly, that's an experience that's becoming more and more rare, as people are less familiar with the habit of shared song, whether it's in a church choir, a community group, somebody's backyard, or a neighborhood. And more I see it as yet another significant part of our mission as a spiritual community in this increasingly secular time, to be a place that remembers how to do this, that carries on the tradition, the craft of community song, so that someday, when it's really needed again, we won't have forgotten how to do it. And I think we're going to need to remember. I think that much is clear. Because I'm sure there will be times ahead, soon and further in the future, when we just won't be able to find ways to harmonize with each other in any other place. You see that throughout Jesus' ministry, don't you? In the gospel, constantly at odds with other people. And the Pharisees, they just couldn't understand each other. Their worldviews were just completely distinct. One group, in their desire to preserve the traditions of their people as assimilation, threatened to erode them away. And Jesus insisting that such rules must be bent for compassion's sake. They were both trying, in their own way, to save their people, yet somehow finding themselves in that endeavor completely at odds. I just wonder what might have happened if they just tried sitting down to sing a psalm together. Can you imagine that? Jesus and the Pharisees. Maybe a song of celebration over the healing of the man with the withered hand. Maybe a song of lament for how difficult things had become for their people. Would it have saved them? I don't know. But certainly it would have softened their hearts. Maybe it would have helped them to hear each other, if only for a moment. You know, I'm grateful for all the things that music does and that musicians do. I'm grateful for music that moves me and uplifts me, and how, like all the other arts, somehow it circumvents my critical mind and speaks directly to my heart so often. But I'm most grateful for how it connects us and encourages us to come together in a way that points me in the direction of God's kingdom. And so I would say, sing on, friends. We are grateful for your gifts and your habits. We're going to hear now a response from the choir, another offering that invites us to consider listening to the various voices in the world and considering how we might join them in lament, yes, but also in hope and solidarity. This will be our prayers of the people today.